Every design to come out of Wuthering Waves has been unique and different. Not you. And this time, they decided to give a character gelatinous legs. Mornyei is the newest character in Wuthering Waves, and despite there being great upcoming units, Mornyei is probably the main one you don't want to skip if you like the toon break mechanic. Because if Chisa is a Shorekeeper for negative status characters, Mornyei is Shorekeeper for toon break. But with Lynae on the team, she's like Shorekeeper plus Ultra Pro Max Premium. This was the character I was most excited for in my early access video of 3.0, and having seen her finalized kit, I am ready to swipe. It's finally happening. I'm breaking free to play after almost 2 years of playing Wuthering Waves. Congratulations to Kuro Games, you've won. I'm gonna do it, and it's definitely for Mornyei, and not because I need an excuse to S6 Amia. Anyways, in this video, I'm gonna give you the brief rundown of what Mornyei does and why she's such a game changer for Wuthering Waves. However, she does also have some downsides, and I'm gonna be going over those in this video as well. And lastly, I'm gonna be discussing whether or not she beats out Shorekeeper. My name is Braxophone, but you can call me Brax, and let's talk about Mornyei. For some reason, the term wheelchair has been a popular team comp name amongst gacha games. I'm not sure why it took off, but I guess it's applicable here. When you put Mornyei on a team with Lynae, they can be played with basically any DPS in the last slot, because both of them do so much on their own that it doesn't matter who the third wheel is. In a way though, Mornyei is the one in the wheelchair and the one pushing it, because the buffs she provides are absolutely nuts. Her outro skill has a 25% all damage amp for all team members, which is the best outro skill buff in the game by far. Back in 1.x, we had some characters giving 25% amp to a specific damage type, plus a smaller elemental damage amp, like Yinlin or Changli. These amps also applied to the incoming resonator, and thus were made with a specific team comp and gameplay in mind. Mornyei said, screw all of that, let's just give 25% amp to everything. Oh, and let's give it to the entire team and not just the next character. Every single character in that team is now doing 25% more damage, and that's not even including her other buffs. That's just passively for having her on your team. Mornyei has 10 million aura, and that's even despite the fact that she's a 4'11" student who vomits after using her heavy attack. I wouldn't be out here shilling Mornyei if it was just a 25% damage amp though. What, you think that's all Kuro would add to a new 3.0 character whose legs are full of unidentifiable liquid? No, because when Mornyei is on the team and applies her observation marker to an enemy, which is just her using her in Forte Circuit heavy attack, when an ally toon breaks an enemy and they're affected by toon strain or toon rupture, Mornyei can grant your team a 40% damage bonus for 8 seconds, which seems like not a lot of time, but I'm him, so it doesn't bother me. And you might be thinking,
oh well, Brax, you only get 1 or 2 toon breaks per fight anyway, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, except she gives you 50% more off-toon gauge from hits, so you'll be getting 2 to 3 toon breaks per fight, and the only reason you would get 1 or 2 again is because that enemy would have died 50% faster. And this is what I'm talking about. Mornyei isn't even on-field destroying guys, and she's still the reason they're dying. If enemies taking extra damage because they got hit by lasers isn't aura, I don't know what is. Outro skill mogging every other outro? Aura. Command seals on her hand? Aura. Giant space laser that blows up the planet? That'd be aura too, but then I'd have to argue that Eggman has aura. But there's more to Mornyei than that, because in addition to 40% damage bonus, 25% all damage amp, and 50% more off-toon gauge from hits, she can also give your team a 20% defense buff, and she has a passive that reduces the max amount of damage you can take from a hit to 30% of your character's max HP. But on top of all of that, she grants resistance to interruption to your team, which means that you can sit there and do your rotation, eat hits from the boss that will only do 30% of your max HP for a few hits, and not get knocked around like a beach ball. Oh, and I forgot to mention, she's a healer, by the way. So in total, you are getting 25% all damage amp, a damage taken cap of 30% max HP to a resonator, 50% more off-toon buildup, interrupt resistance, up to 40% damage bonus based on Mornyei's ER, 20% defense to all resonators, 25% attack from her echo set that we'll go over later, and if you decide to get her weapon, your whole team will also get 20% more crit damage. But when you pair Mornyei with Lynae, she gets even crazier, because if you remember from my last video, Lynae gives 25% liberation amplify to the next character, 30% attack to the next character, 24% damage bonus to the team, another 24% damage bonus if you have her weapon, 10% more all-type damage bonus to your next character, another 15% amplify to your next character, and 40 tune break boost to the entire team. So by putting them together, you're getting up to 65% damage amp, 98% damage bonus, 55% attack, and an increase to break damage and how often you can break enemies, resistance to interruption, an increased defense to take less damage, and an emergency passive that prevents death, and on top of all of that, you get a healer. And that's without mentioning, if you have Mornyei's weapon, 20% more crit damage to your entire team. Mornyei is like if you took the one girl in your college computer science class and gave her the nuclear codes. She holds a ton of power and everyone's a DPS now. And that's kind of just the truth of the matter. If you play Mornyei with Lynae, it's the best team comp for almost every crit DPS character in the game, because Toon Break had already made everyone stronger, but both Mornyei and Lynae enhance it, and enhance the damage of your main carry. And as a result, a majority of characters are viable if you play Mornyei and Lynae, even in endgame content. And if you get Mornyei's S1, you can erase Lynae from the picture entirely, because Mornyei can get the buff on her own, making it so that you can use more dedicated characters to your main damage dealer, and also opening up team comps. But with that said, Lynae's buffs are so crazy that you might even be hard-pressed to find a character that can pair better with your main DPS, which is absolutely crazy, and I'm gonna talk about Mornyei, her weapon, and S1 a little bit later in the video. And of course, the cherry on top of all of this, she's on the easier side to build and play. If you look at her best in slot set, Mornyei wants the new healing set called Halo of Starry Radiance that grants attack for the use of off-tune mechanics. Mornyei is a character that scales on defense and energy regen, meaning you'll want your 2-3 cost echoes to be energy regen main stats and to try and get ER on her substats as well. Your 1 cost will be defense percent, and for your main stat, I recommend a healing bonus 4 cost to heal the enemy to death. But the main thing is to make sure that you use Reactor Husk as your active echo for an extra 10% ER on Mornyei. In total, you do need about 260% energy regen to max out all of her buffs. This does seem high until you realize that there is a 4-star greatsword that has energy regen on the main stat and can get up to 51.8% at level 90. This is the Discord greatsword, and it will also give you concerto energy whenever you use her skill, meaning that Mornyei's rotations should feel flawless and smooth, even with a 4-star, though you still will get a lot of benefits from her signature. Building characters in Wuthering Waves has always been pretty easy, but playing them is usually the harder part depending on the character. But not only does Mornyei give a ridiculous amount of buffs, she's also very easy to play. With Mornyei on the field, all you have to do is basic 3 times, activate her Forte Circuit with a heavy attack, then do 3 more basic attacks, skill, heavy attack again, use her liberation, echo, and swap. Sounds like a lot when I speak it out loud, but I promise it's not. Here's the rotation on screen for those of you guys who want to see a visual. The hardest part of Mornyei is literally anything but her legs, but the next hardest part is not getting hit out of the air during her first Forte Circuit. Everything after the first one doesn't matter too much, but if even a fly lands on her shoulder, she falls out of the sky like she weighs a kilogram of feathers. Overall though, Mornyei is super easy. All you have to do is put her in the first slot and Lynae in the second, and any character you want to deal damage will do damage. That's ultimately why Mornyei is an incredible pull in 3.x. But on the topic of slots, Mornyei takes the space of Shorekeeper in most teams she's usable in, and honestly, she is very comparable to Shorekeeper in value when she's on any normal team. Shorekeeper is a crit buffing character with 15% damage amp, and Mornyei is a tune break buffing character with slightly higher damage amp. Mornyei actually performs slightly worse than Shorekeeper in crit teams without Lynae though, because Lynae is what enables many of Mornyei's buffs to actually happen, since you need someone to activate Tune Strain or Tune Rupture for them to activate. And at the time of making this video, she's the only other 3.x character in the game. But because we're still in version 3.0, it's likely that other characters can and will come along that can help activate Mornyei's kit as well, which does in fact make Mornyei the Shorekeeper of Toon Break, except in those teams, she's even better. So I guess in mentioning all of that, what I really mean is even if you don't have Lynae, Mornyei will be really good. You just need another 3.x character if you want her to outperform Shorekeeper in endgame content. content. Alternatively, you could also pull Mornyei's S1, which allows her to get full access to her kit without any other Toon Break focused characters. This would not only net you all of Mornyei's buffs and an overall power increase just by slotting the one character, but it would also open up your second team slot to be a dedicated support for your main damage dealer, which could further increase your damage even more. Mornyei's weapon is also great since it grants your team crit damage, but between the weapon and S1, I would argue S1 is much more value for players that want to use older units or replace Shorekeeper. And on top of that, there is a 4-star greatsword that does just such a great job for Mornyei. I was surprised to find out how strong Mornyei was to begin with, but I was doubtful that they would allow a character to be stronger than Shorekeeper by default. And to be fair, that's kind of what happened. Mornyei alone is not better than Shorekeeper in most teams, but given that we're going into 3.x and new characters will be given Toon Break mechanics, she will definitely serve a more relevant meta purpose for the rest of the version, so long as you use newer units. And if you don't want to use newer units but still want a Shorekeeper upgrade, S1 Mornyei will do just that. Anyways, Mornyei is a super cool character conceptually, and in execution, I think Kuro did her more justice than I thought she'd get. Even in the story, whenever she speaks, she's spitting so many bars, I'm obligated to call her Mornyei West. I'm sorry, that was so stupid, and I hate that guy.